Good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome on into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabara here. Jared Smith in championship weekend, my friend, is complete. How are you feeling now? We have 2 more weeks left, the Super Bowl, and then football's done forever.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's in hibernation now.
Yeah.
It definitely felt like it felt like 2 Super Bowls yesterday, the way that the games were billed. And then I'll be honest, the first one was just a total dud. And we can get into the specifics of, what the matchup's going to look like, et cetera, et cetera. But man, the Eagles just rolled right through the playoffs, huh? 38-7, 31-7. Daniel Jones, Josh Johnson, Brock Purdy. I mean, they just basically tied up their shoelaces, ran out onto the field, and just rolled right through the postseason. Pretty easy road, huh?
Here's the thing. If Brock Purdy was healthy, I would have liked to see what the 49ers are able to do with an actual quarterback for a full 4 quarters, because even though he was back in the second half, he didn't throw the ball, which I kind of liked because my no interception prop hit, which you love to see, and also my Jalen touchdown prop hit, which you also love to see. So my 2 props that I got at plus 130, plus 140, they both hit. I mean,
good for
I'm
you,
not
LJ.
complaining about it. I did want the 49ers to win. Here's the thing, is I just wanted to see a good game with the 49ers actually 100% healthy, because their offense, which is so talented, couldn't get going. They only had basically 3 play calls the entire second half, which is crazy. Christian McCaffrey stepped in the wild card quarterback situation for a little bit. That's not working. Josh Johnson, I mean, he was having a hard time hearing the play calls, and they had 3 delay of games within a quarter and a half, which was pretty crazy. But the Eagles did. They played a great game all around. Jalen Hurts lived up to the moment. I will say he was good. He wasn't great yesterday. Maybe a little bit of a shoulder injury is still lagging a little bit, but they held him to 121 passing yards and 39 rushing. It wasn't his best and most productive game by any means, but he is used to the postseason. He was on 4 college football playoff teams, 3 national championship games. Now he has to go up against Patrick Mahomes, but I don't know. It wasn't a fully healthy 49ers team. I don't think we got. I wonder what happens if the Niners challenge the Devontae Smith 4th down call. That would be big. I wonder what would happen if Brock Purdy didn't get injured. I feel like a lot of the 49ers fans are probably wondering what if too, and feeling a little salty heading into this postseason, but the Eagles deserve it. They're the winningest team in the NFL this season, and they're going on to play the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. What did you think about the Eagles' full team game and how they were able to pressure the 49ers despite not having a quarterback there?
Yeah, I don't really think we can look at anything that the Eagles did on defense and use it as viable handicap fodder for what we're going to see in 2 weeks. Here's what I can tell you big picture. These teams took advantage of 2 of the easiest schedules in the NFL this season. And in the postseason, though, it was obvious which team had the tougher road. One team had to face 2 number 1 quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow. And the other one faced Brock Purdy, Josh Johnson, and Daniel Jones. And if you can kind of glean where I'm leaning for the Super Bowl based off of that handicap. And it goes against what the market has done so far. And I fully admit I made a horrendously awful bet last night when the market dropped at a pick'em, and I was like, oh, I love the Chiefs. Absolutely love the Chiefs. And now I could have waited another hour and gotten +2 or +2.5, but I'm sitting on my lemon ticket of Chiefs pick'em. But I still feel like it's a good bet, not good bet in terms of the market, but I think it's a good bet in terms of what the closing number might be, because I think the market was an overreaction last night to some of the Chiefs injuries. And we'll see what happens with some of these guys. I know Juju got banged up, and Tony got banged up, and Hardman got banged up, and we'll see what that wide receiver group looks like. But the Eagles made it through the game relatively healthy, and they won the game by 3 scores. And I think that's why you saw the move, pop off of 0 like it did. But I don't know. We're going back to the same discussion we had last week. You're giving me Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and you're giving me points. And I know that the Eagles defense is better. I get that. But, man, it's tough to pass up. I mean, Jalen Hurts didn't look overly dominant, not like, he was running through hot knife through butter, and the Niners defense is very good. But I think the Chiefs defense has a couple good guys up front, too, that can get after you and can make your life a little miserable. And they've got Steve Spagnuolo, who's been there a gajillion times, and everyone on the Eagles staff is going to be in their first Super Bowl. Gannon, the defensive coordinator, Sirianni, everyone. And I think the Chiefs are the right side here, but we'll have plenty of time to hash it out. Just my gut instinct says Chiefs. We'll see what the research says, and we'll go on from there.
Yeah, against a really good defense like the Niners. I will say at the same time, too, like the Niners kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit with a lot of the penalties that they had at a certain point. But when you look at the AFC Championship game, you're right. I mean, Mahomes played incredibly. He had a bum ankle the whole time. We kind of saw that come to fruition towards the end of that game, too, because, I mean, he basically laid himself out for it on one of the last plays of the game. And you saw him kind of limping there towards the end as well. But it was a wild, down to the wire game. Great performances by both teams. And bad penalty on Osai. He had such a good freaking game. Down to one mistake.
That was tough.
Which it was a penalty for sure. But there were a lot of questionable calls.
There was also holding penalties on the front end of it, too, that weren't called. Listen, as expected, the Mahomes ankle injury really was not a factor in the game at all. It really wasn't.
No, it wasn't. But you saw at the end he was limping a little bit, too. I mean, when you're getting 4 to 5 hours of treatment every single day for 8 days, now he's going to have 2 weeks to prepare. He probably tweaked it again because it really looked like he was limping hard after he took that.
Yeah, it got worse as the game went on.
But
totally. I heard he didn't do a Toradol shot
before the game.
I heard he didn't
do a shot before the game.
He didn't get one.
That's it. Yeah, so he didn't get a shot before the game. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks. But I feel like the 2 big storylines for this next week is Andy Reid, old team versus new team, and Mahomes' ankle. That's going to be another storyline, but he made all the big plays when he needed to. The other big storyline for me is how is the Kansas City O-line going to hold up? Philly's front, I think, is better than Cincinnati's front, and Cincinnati had Mahomes under pressure all night. So it's going to be interesting to see how their O-line holds up. But Kansas City played a great game. It's a heartbreaking loss for the Bengals. Obviously, that came down to the wire. It was exciting. It was fun to watch. But it is Patrick Mahomes' world, and we're all just living in it at this point.
Yeah. The Chiefs' offensive line, actually, numbers-wise, that was the first thing I looked at last night. Because, I mean, it was something we looked at a lot with the Bengals, too. The Chiefs' offensive line, pound for pound, Trent Williams is obviously the best, but if you spread it out amongst the other 5 guys, the Chiefs' offensive line actually has higher win rate numbers than the Niners did this year. So I think it's fair to say that the Chiefs' offensive line is better collectively as a unit than what the Eagles faced yesterday against the Niners. And listen, I do think their defensive line is what won them the game. Let's hit time out and call it. Jalen Hurts and that offense is not why the Eagles won yesterday.
No.
They just ran the ball and a couple of easy running scores that the holes were so big you or I could have ran through those holes. And you give credit to the Eagles offensive line for creating those holes, but it's not like Jalen Hurts was running all around making all these great plays last night. He missed a lot of wide open throws. He missed A.J. Brown on a wide open out route, like wide open.
Yeah.
Like plenty of time. Pocket was perfect, and it just sailed 10 yards over his head. I don't think Jalen Hurts played that well yesterday, and I'll take it a step further. If he plays like that in the Super Bowl, I think they lose the game. He has to be great because he's facing a quarterback that is going to make every single throw, and he's going to have a ton of pressure in his face the whole time. But man, I think if you played that game yesterday and you take how well the Eagles played and then you extrapolate that to how well the Chiefs played and you mash those two together, I think the Eagles win on a neutral field yesterday. I mean, the Chiefs win on a neutral
Yeah.
yesterday. Patrick Mahomes made
Yeah.
some ridiculous throws. The throw he made on the touchdown to Scantling to make it 20-13. I mean, that thing was an absolute laser. I might be
Yeah.
one of the best throws I've seen all season, considering the circumstances of his ankle. So
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is gonna have to up his game because he's facing the MVP of the
Totally.
league, and that to me is the matchup within the matchup for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying when we were talking about the NFC Championship game. I said Jalen Hurts was good. He wasn't great. I mean, he only had 121 passing
No,
yards. I said that just a little bit
he's
ago, and
not
he only
great.
had 39 rushing yards. Like, I mean, he did not
Yeah,
look great, but he did live up to the moment. He got it done. Again, I wonder what would have happened if the 49ers offense was 100% healthy and they actually had a quarterback under center who could throw the ball.
yeah.
Because
They
when
might
you're
have
just
won
running,
that
when
game
you're just
yesterday.
running,
And that Devontae
I
Smith
would,
play
I
you said was
wish we could
huge.
rewind. I wish we could rewind. And it's, oh, poor Brock Purdy. I wonder what's going to happen with him next year. Let's actually get into that. What's going to happen next year? What's next for the Bengals? What's next for the Niners? Let's start it out with the Bengals. They need to figure out that O-line. I know, obviously, 3 of the guys were out. They were injured. But Burrow, again, it's been the problem the last 2 years. He's under pressure all playoffs, and that definitely hurt them yesterday. The other pieces, it's hard to get to a conference championship. It's hard to get to a Super Bowl. So I wonder how many more chances they will actually have to make a deep playoff push, if not go all the way. But I feel like the O-line needs to be the first key focus for this team in the offseason, don't you think?
Yeah, I think with the Bengals, it's just they don't have to make any changes. They're kind of still in their window. Burrow and Chase and Higgins. Really, Higgins was man. Higgins was unbelievable yesterday. I tell you what, the Bengals are a worthy adversary. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Hunt for Red October.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Connery is so freaking good in that movie. He's like a worthy adversary. I can't do the accent, but the Bengals
Yeah, don't
are
try.
so bad. It's early. My dog puked all over the bed last night. Give me the benefit of the doubt, LJ. The Bengals are they're dogs, man. And Lou Anarumo, by the way, speaking of Lou Anarumo, this is breaking news like 5 minutes ago, right before we went on, interviewing for the Cardinals head coaching job. Very well deserved.
Wow.
I don't know if he'll get it, but I mean, the adjustments he made yesterday were unbelievable. The Chiefs here's what they needed to win that game yesterday. They were up 13-6 at half. They needed Patrick Mahomes to make an absurd throw off one leg through 2 guys in a window that was probably smaller than my monitor here. And then he needed the linebacker to make a silly turnover, a silly, penalty that basically was like a turnover. And how many penalties did the Bengals defense commit? Now, some of them were kind of
A lot.
ick, but like
I
Anarumo
will
on the
say the
sidelines was just
officiating,
punching
there were
every
some
button.
questionable flags being called. There were some
Of
questionable
course.
flags being called in both of the games
Of
yesterday.
course.
So the officiating was a
The
little
games were not
to me.
officiated well yesterday. They were not.
No. But
They
it's
absolutely
crazy.
were
So
not.
where do you think the Bengals need to make the biggest push in the offseason then? You don't think it's the O-line? You think it's defensive pieces? Like, where do you
I
think they
mean,
need to make a
add
push?
in a veteran offensive lineman. That wouldn't be a huge shift, though. Again, their
Mhm.
core is under the rookie deals. They don't have to pay Burrow, Chase, or Higgins yet. They don't really have to do a whole lot except add in those key areas. Yeah, you probably add a secondary guy, a Awuzie, their big, their best corner was hurt for most of the year. You want him back and healthy. You obviously want to add to the offensive line, but their offensive line was holding up okay until Lyle Collins, Alex Kappa, and Jonah
Yeah.
Williams, 3 of their starters, got hurt the last 6 weeks. So again, the fact that
Mhm.
the Bengals, without their best cover corner, 3 of their offensive lineman starters still made it to the AFC Championship game, still won a road playoff game in Buffalo, still was tied with the Chiefs in the fourth quarter. You don't really
Crazy.
have to make a lot of changes. You just have to get them back to that spot healthy and in the right mindset. If Anarumo leaves, obviously that changes a lot, and he might
Mhm.
leave. He's interviewing right now at the Arizona Cardinals. So I think that's just get healthy and get back to the same spot and let Joe do his thing, because man, Burrow he had heat in his grill all night, man. He's gonna be peeling off of Chris Jones's helmet stickers from his face mask the whole night, man.
Seriously, sacked 5 times. I mean, he was under pressure for sure. Let's take a look at the Niners, because there's going to be a lot of questions for this team in the offseason. Obviously, they have all the right pieces, right? But fans are wondering what would have happened if Purdy didn't get hurt, or if they had called Devontae Smith's massive 3rd down reception or 4th down reception. It was 4th down at that point, 4th 1, incomplete. What do they do, Jared? A couple questions. What do they do with the quarterback situation next year? Because obviously, you still have Trey Lance. What do you do with him? Do you pay Jimmy Garoppolo? Is Purdy the backup? Does Purdy earn a starting job? And then also, this team is firmly in the championship window. Kyle Shanahan had the scheme, and this year, skill players on both sides of the ball. They need that elite quarterback to get over the bump. What do they do with their quarterback situation now moving forward?
It's a great question.
What do they do?
No freaking idea. John Lynch.
Yeah, I don't think any of us
pay me to be a consultant. I don't even know if I would have any answers for you. You kind of made your bed with Trey Lance, so you have to sleep with him another year. I think. I know that might sound really dirty and crude, but I do think you have to sleep with Trey Lance one more year, because he hasn't even played. You invested all of this capital in him, and he's played 5 games. So
yeah.
He has to be given a legitimate chance to be the starter, unless you admit defeat on your decision to trade up in the draft for him in year 3. It's right. This is the 3rd year now, going into his 2nd offseason. This is usually when quarterbacks make their jump, if they're in the right mindset and if they're in the right situation in year 3. But it's hard to call him a year 3 quarterback. He hasn't played in years 1 or 2. So I really don't know what to make of the Niners quarterback situation. Here's what I do know. Jimmy Garoppolo will not be on the team. I'm pretty certain of that. Although we thought that last year too, and it didn't work out that way. So this NFL tends to throw curveballs at us.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. A few quarterback jobs in the league are definitely open this offseason, so we'll see what sort of moves some of the teams make. We'll see what happens with the trio that is the 49ers' unhealthy quarterbacks right now, heading into next season. It's going to be interesting. But we do have one more game left in the 22-23 season. For more, let's bring in our guest, Ben Brown, betting and data analyst for PFF, a good friend of the show. Ben, hey, how are you? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Jared. Happy Monday, Lauren. I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to 1 week off, and then of course the Super Bowl to kind of wrap up the season. I don't think we could ask for
take any
a better matchup,
Ben.
I would say, to kind of figure out the game.
You're just gonna do work straight through. You're gonna have the earphones in.
We're excited
cone
for
of
it.
silence. Work straight through.
I love it.
The bye week, right, Ben?
I mean, and I'll work straight through the bye week. Obviously, there's some parties happening. I don't know if either of you guys are going to be in Glendale or anything for it, but we got some plans. I would say leading up to it, and then I think no days off until at least March. I guess you're right, Jared.
Yeah,
but
seriously.
But PFF does apparently have an unlimited PTO policy that I've never taken advantage of, and I'm very much planning on taking advantage of it this offseason. So
yes, once after the Super Bowl hits, it's time to take advantage of that time off. Speaking of time off, that's exactly what the 49ers and the Bengals are going to have after yesterday until next season at this point. But let's get into the NFC championship game first, because obviously the Eagles steamrolled over the 49ers. Niners defense looked good. They did commit a lot of penalties, but it would have been interesting to see how the Niners offense would have done with a quarterback that could actually throw the ball, because the defense, Jalen Hurts, we were just talking about it. He did not look that great. He looked good, 121 passing yards, just under 40 rushing yards, but he wasn't phenomenal by any means. But what do you think about the Eagles' performance and now moving on to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, definitely. I can echo that. This was, from PFF's perspective, Jalen Hurts' second lowest graded game of the season. So very much, I would say, unimpressive, right? I think he missed a deep shot to A.J. Brown early. Got kind of fortunate to complete that 4th down play to Devontae Smith. That very much wasn't a catch, probably, if it would have been reviewed. So, outside of those plays, like it was underwhelming. There were a lot of, situations that definitely broke correctly for Philadelphia from a penalty perspective, but, they got the job done. And when they play from ahead, they're a really difficult team to, beat. Obviously, if they can dominate kind of the offensive line, the trenches area and those sorts of things, like they can play bully football and they can win a lot of games. So we'll see how that kind of, plays out against the Kansas City Chiefs. I do think, this was maybe the one spot where the Chiefs were probably, had the defensive advantage along the defensive line facing off against the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think that huge shift from playing probably the worst offensive line in football to playing what is very much the best offensive line in football very much is probably going to be the matchup that dictates who actually wins this one. I know everyone wants to compare Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, but if the Chiefs defense can't get pressure, like their secondary is still very capable, I would say, of being exposed. And I think that the Eagles have the pass catching situation to, kind of take advantage of that. So I would say there's probably a lot of reasons to not like either team's winning performance in this conference championship round, but I don't know if I'd let that impact, your projection for the Super Bowl all that much.
Totally agree. It's always one in the trenches, and the Bengals trenches finally, like they just like the dam broke. Right? They were facing the Bills last week and not a lot of punch up front. But I'll be honest, I think the Chiefs like to be disrespected on defense. I think that's when they play their best defensive games. And that's when Spags and those guys cook up these little wrinkles. I mean, let's be honest. You want to talk about the discrepancy with experience handling these moments, not just on the field, but on the sidelines too. Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, Eric Bieniemy, and then Steichen and Gannon and Sirianni. And that's a very interesting chess match there, how they scheme it out. And, Andy Reid off the bye, we'll hear that a lot. But I think the offensive line for the Eagles and the defensive line for the Chiefs, that's definitely the matchup edge. We'll see how it shakes out. Let's go to your overall prep for this game, because there's probably a lot of bettors out there watching the show. This might be their first time betting a Super Bowl. They might not understand the way that the markets work, but unlike other NFL weeks, the props are going to drop probably tomorrow. I think on Tuesday night, Wednesday. Yeah. Very soon, we'll start to see prop numbers come out into the market. And the sharp bettors are waiting like sharks on a feeding frenzy to bet these things. How do you approach the prop market? Obviously, unlike other NFL weeks, these props are going to get bet into for about 8, 9, 10 days before the game. Does that change your approach at all? How do you strategize for prepping the props for the Super Bowl?
Prop prepping.
I mean, yeah, I think the prop prepping, it happens. That's why we get no days off, basically, is for the prop prepping, right? So I do think it's very matchup specific, and that's definitely how I've approached it for the past couple seasons. But the Super Bowl is kind of, like you said, like a completely unique monster in so many ways, because there is so much more handle and volume and these sorts of people kind of entering the market that, the common refrain is very much that this is like the one game that the public can kind of move lines in certain directions and all these things, which I guess I would tend to believe. I don't really have any insight, on that side of the counter as to that not being true. So I have to probably take that for face value. But like, I think if you're evaluating it, like early in the week, especially tomorrow, if you like any overs, if you like any matchups from the offensive side of the football, like you need to be hitting those early and often, and you need to probably hit them as much as you probably want to, because I really only see basically, 95% of the props moving in one direction, and that's towards the over, especially that, with late money kind of coming in and continuing to push lines out. So a one that I'm really keen in on, I think, is, a guy like Isaiah Pacheco. I liked him to score a touchdown in this conference championship round. He did get in. Unfortunately, that was like one of the few calls that didn't go the Chiefs' direction on that offensive holding call. But he looked good. I mean, he was very much, I would say, the second best skill position player for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think him kind of coming out of the backfield and some of these like flare route opportunities, like he had, twice as many targets as he's had in any other game this season. Very much is dominating the rush attempt share as well. But I like him in the passing game, and especially if the Chiefs, wide receiver injury situation doesn't resolve, I would say, positively for them. If they are missing guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman and Kadarius Toney, like they need a playmaker with this ball in the hands that can actually generate some yards after the catch. And like Pacheco's kind of the only guy that can do that right now. So I like him to go over his receiving yards number. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to it was in the conference championship game, but if that's even within a few yards of where he was at, like he's going to see definitely an uptick in volume. And he's very much the guy that, I want to get in on early and often on his over. So I think betting him early is probably one of my favorite bets. And then on the flip side, like I think, I said this on another show, but my worst bet probably all season was for Juju Smith-Schuster to lead the league in receiving yards and receptions. And I was, painfully aware of the fact that was not going to hit around week 8 or week 9. Like that was unfortunately a really bad free agent signing for Kansas City. And he very much doesn't seem like the guy that they needed to. And I think part of the reason why they brought in Kadarius Toney is they realized like he is kind of already over the hill. He probably shouldn't be given his age and everything else, but he's just not involved whatsoever. So I've been riding his under receptions, under receiving yards props for the last 8 or 9 weeks, which is very much, I would say, keeping me afloat. Very much been like the one spot that I've definitely liked. So I liked it last week. I know he got injured, and people point towards that being the reason why he went under reception props for like the 8th straight week, but he's just not involved whatsoever. So my late week or, Sunday morning bet is very much going to be trying to hammer some of those Juju Smith-Schuster unders that people are actually, buying into him as being any sort of differentiator in the Super Bowl matchup, because he's just not going to do it whatsoever. And especially if Kadarius Toney is kind of in the fold and back from his injury, Juju to go under is, very much going to be probably my favorite bet, I would say, of the Super Bowl.
And Mecole Hardman. Hope he comes back too. Yeah. And we hardly
That's going to be interesting.
Mecoled him. Got hurt halfway through the game.
It's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out. I want to know, like, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? Because obviously Patrick Mahomes, we're getting 1.5 points with him again right now. His ankle at the end of the game, I know everyone talked about his ankle last week. It did get progressively worse as the game went on. He didn't do a Toradol shot before the game. He did do 4 to 5 hours of treatment every day. Now he has 2 weeks, but you saw him kind of limping there towards the end of that game, especially after he was pushed out of bounds on the call that basically changed the whole trajectory of what that game was. Do you think that he will be okay, or do you think that impacts the line at all if people kind of don't know what to expect from his ankle?
Yeah, definitely. I think we see him very similar to where he was at in the conference championship game, where he probably looks relatively okay, but they're very much not going to want to get him on, a ton of high leverage type rollouts in certain situations. I do know he had the one, touchdown pass to Travis Kelce early on, and the announcers were like, "Oh, he looks completely fine." But even in that play, like I very much did not agree with the announcer saying that he looked fine, and that he did look hesitant stepping on that leg. So I think he's very much probably going to be in, it's hard to quantify, but very much probably in this like 70 to 75% effectiveness from Patrick Mahomes' perspective, and very much is going to be missing the element of being able to get outside the pocket and run. I know he, like you said, Lauren, he did do that on the crucial, 3rd down conversion and then got the penalty, but like outside of that, very hesitant to do it. I would be shocked if he's, really laying it all out there, even capable of kind of laying it all out there from the rushing perspective. And I do think that's, a big reason why, places like Circa and everyone else kind of opened with the Chiefs -2.5 and are now, very much on the opposite side of it with the Chiefs anywhere from, 1.5 to 2.5. I haven't checked, relatively recently, but, the 5-point swing between the threes, like the probability isn't huge, but it definitely matters. And I think that, the one reason for that very much has to be Patrick Mahomes, because he is, very clearly probably the only real advantage that the Kansas City Chiefs have in this matchup. Like outside of him and Travis Kelce, like you go back and forth, and the Eagles are stacked. And I think, this matchup in particular is really interesting because it shows kind of the two schools of thought as far as like how teams can be built and be successful, whether you do hit on that elite type quarterback and pay him top dollars and he is the best player at the position on a veteran deal, or you kind of, build through the draft and you have this guy that, can kind of play towards a top 5 ranking maybe at the quarterback position, but, has games where he's very much not that and very much has like the roster around him to support that. So I think that, the dichotomy between the two team building approaches is very much, really intriguing from my perspective. And I think that, where I'm looking at it, like it's hard to see the Eagles with any sort of, disadvantage. And for that reason, I think that outside of a Patrick Mahomes completely masterclass type game, like I think the Eagles are probably going to end up being the correct side.
This is going to be fun, Jared. I I feel like these are two of the most passionate fan bases too in the NFL.
100%.
Like last year, we were at the Super Bowl in LA, and it was fun. It was so much fun. But it's like you saw more of like the LA crowd. It wasn't as much of the passionate fan vibes. There were a lot of Cincy fans there, I will say, but not as many Rams fans. I feel like the Rams fans that were there were just there because it was the cool thing to do. At that point, I feel like this Super Bowl, we're going to see these fans travel. Like these truly are two of the most passionate. Wouldn't you say the two of the most passionate NFL fan groups too?
The Eagles especially. I mean, like there's an entire section of hell reserved for Philly fans. It's like they've got their own. It's like when you go to the VIP section of the club and it's like, roped off and it's like VIP Philly a-hole fans. That's where they go when they die, right? That's
Glendale needs to get that grease ready. Glendale needs to get that grease.
It didn't work. They were riding the poles hard last night. They were riding them real hard.
I know. It's going to be fun. Ben, we so appreciate you coming on. Thank you for giving us your expertise. I'm sure we'll be talking to you throughout this next 2 weeks at some point before the Super Bowl. So thank you for coming on. We appreciate you. Happy Monday.
Great job,
you both.
Ben.
Have a great rest of your show.
Take some of that PTO,
It's always a pleasure, guys.
Peace, Ben. That is Ben Brown. You can follow him on Twitter at PFF_Ben Brown, betting and data analyst for PFF. All right, before we get into our best bets, let's talk about our friends at Superbook Sports. Let's bet it. Presented by Superbook Sports. Pile up the wins, pile up the money with Superbook. Right now, the best betting app from Las Vegas, giving you free money every week you make a bet. Just place a $50 bet each week with Superbook, and they'll give you a $5 bonus up to $50 for betting each week afterwards. If you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to get your streak started today. From superbook.com, my friend, to Pickswise.com, 3-star plays of the day on the site. Who do we got today?
Big old nothing burger today. Everyone's taking the day off.
Like we're all just chilling today.
Which I totally understand. And the chat is not going to be happy with how we're handling our plays of the day. But I think there's a lesson there, which is you don't have to gamble every day, guys. It's okay. You can take a day off. You're allowed. The betting markets will be there tomorrow. You are allowed. I know that's not what people, the gambling culture wants us to think, especially the sports books, but it's totally acceptable to say, you know what? I got my fill yesterday. I've wagered thousands of dollars on NFL. You can take today off. Tomorrow it'll be there for you to bet. But there are no 3-star plays.
Hey.
And I have no play of the day because there's only like 8 college basketball games and half of them are MEAC. And the one Big 12 game, I'll say this. If I had to make a bet tonight, gun to my head, you have to make a wager or else I'm pulling the trigger. I would take the 5.5 at home with Syracuse. No research done there at all. I can tell you my number's 4.4. So you get a point over a relatively key number, and it's a home underdog, and it's a Virginia team that probably, doesn't travel as well as you would think up to Syracuse. But that's it. There's really not that much going on tonight, and I think it's totally fair to take a night off from the gambling markets.
Yeah, I feel lost because the NHL is currently an all-star break, and so
very sad.
I'm pretty devastated. No football, there's barely any college basketball, no hockey tonight. There is some NBA.
No.
Stay away from that a little. I don't know. I'm sad there's no hockey bets for me to make tonight because, Jared, I'm just going to pump my own tires for a second. I've had 13 of my last 15 hockey bets. 13 of my last 15 hockey bets. I know. So feeling pretty good. But I am going to get back into doing What the Puck a little bit more too. I posted one on Friday. I'll be posting more throughout the second, half of the season, even though there is no half, because I feel like All-Star break comes 2/3 of the way through the season. It's pretty crazy, but they will be back February 5th, and we will be back on that hockey horse. So cannot even wait for it. But no best bet for me today. I'm staying away. I'll get into college basketball probably tomorrow, but until then, that's it for us. Sad day today. We'll be breaking down NFL the next 2 weeks. A lot of college basketball, a lot of NBA, a lot of NHL coming at you over the next week, 2 weeks. So we're looking forward to it. Until then, guys, have a great night or day. It's morning. It's definitely morning. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's get it. Let's bet it.